Is 2 hours too long in the gym when using auto-regulatory rest between sets and eccentric tempo? Question mark. Brian, go.
I would say no. I think the question is maybe in a roundabout way trying to ask what is too long in the gym and why. And I think a lot of that has to do probably with rest intervals. It's like if you're doing a bunch of short rest and getting a lot of residual fatigue between sets, then I think you're really going to start to see the effects of each additional set start to have less and less of an impact. But I mean, I think 2 hours, I mean, if for example, like a power lifter who's doing multiple compound lifts, that's probably a quick session for somebody like that. And so, no, I think it's reasonable. I mean, I think if you're spending more than 2.5, 3 hours in the gym, even as a power lifter, you're probably wasting some time. And there's plenty of lifters that are doing that. I think for most bodybuilding work, sub 2 hours is probably the goal. But I think that there's not an arbitrary cutoff. It's all relative kind of to what you're doing.
Yeah. Anything to add, Bert?
Yeah, it's definitely not the eccentrics. I think that's why he included that in there. Is me being conscious of my eccentrics, adding to how much time I spent there. It couldn't be unless I can't see that happening in any practical way.
2 minutes tops.
Yeah, total.
But, when designing programs, I think that is, right now I'm training 3 days a week, and because I'm training 3 days a week, I am there a little bit longer than I would be if I was training 4 or 5. So that's sometimes something that you can consider is if that is just getting in the way of the other things you have to do, it's okay, if you have room, it's you can add days. That's always an option. Because again, when you build splits, it's okay, this is the work I feel like I have to do, per body part, if we're speaking about bodybuilding. And then you just kind of split that up in a way that makes sense, where you think it creates the least amount of overlap, and each day stays at a relatively high quality. So you can play around with that, and there's also other hacks that you can mess around with, drop sets. You can perform myo reps, things like that. But I think 2 hours is, I think, what most people who are pretty serious about their training, they end up averaging somewhere around 90 minutes to 2 hours.
Yeah. And especially with powerlifters, or depending on what you're getting up to, warm-up sets can get a little crazy depending on how strong you are and what you have to get to.
And that's so different because
to get to a top single takes so long.
And to be there, it's powerlifting, a lot of it's it's study time. It's not just getting through what is on your list of things to do. It's you're there to fix things, to be mindful of the way you move, to find better ways of moving as you're performing all the work you need to do. And so powerlifting is one of those things where it's if you know what, today's one of those days where you might need, 8 minutes in between your sets to keep quality really high. That's just what it takes. That's the catch with powerlifting. 2 hours to most powerlifters, like Brian said, they'd be whoa, is this an intro block or something?
Yeah.
So for this particular asker, if we were to say what would be the markers of it being too long? If y'all said there's not an actual time set, what would be a couple things to look out for to know that it is hitting the too long for you mark?
I would say if your frequency, because Berto brought up a good point with the frequency, if your frequency is more than, say, 4 days a week, 4 or more, I don't really see a reason why 2 hours, you should be going over 2 hours. If you're on a 3-day split, maybe. But oftentimes the people that are on 3-day splits are kind of doing that out of necessity because of time constraints anyway. And they're okay with doing a little bit less volume. It's very few people. It's I can only train 3 days a week, but I can train 4 hours at a time.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest thing is if you're resting an adequate amount of time between sets, the sessions are going to add up in terms of time. So that's why I said, I think a lot of it's relative to the amount of sets you're doing. If you're doing short rest intervals, like sub 3 minutes on compounds, which is what I would consider like a shorter rest interval. I think if you're taking 2 hours in the gym like that, you're probably doing like a lot more volume than you probably want or need in that case.
Yeah. And it'll just show in your quality of work
Yeah.
per day, if not over time.
Yeah.
Or both.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's too much if you're starting to lose quality in the session, or if it's getting in the way of the other things like you want to do. I think those are the two main factors I would look at.
Cool.